Hello and welcome to today's webinar, where today, of course, we're looking at your deals. It's all about the opportunities that you're finding and a chance for us to have a look at those for you, looking at it through the lens of Nimbus Maps and the information that's provided through the system. This is me. I'm one of the co-founders here at Nimbus. Done a few schemes in my time, so hopefully can help you with the schemes that you're looking at today. So without further ado, what I would like to do is, if anybody would like to raise a particular property with me, what I'd like to do is to just jump into the chat, sorry, into the control panel on Zoom. You can click the raise hand button. They'll ask you to unmute your microphone. You can just ask the questions away around the particular properties that you're looking for. So I'm just going to give you a moment to find that, or indeed if you're popping it in the chats or anything like that, then equally that will be fine too. So let's just see if anybody would like to ask a question at all. Could be a relatively short session, this, couldn't it, if nobody wants to ask any questions. So I'll give you a moment to work out whether you'd like to raise anything. We can look in various areas. We can look for whatever you'd like to find. We can flip this on its head and say, well, how do we find deals in certain areas? How do we find certain types of opportunities if that would help? So Ian's raised his hand. Let's just see if we can ask Ian to talk. We'll be just put his hand back down again now. Hi Ian, how are you doing?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Oh great. Great, thank you very much indeed. Actually, well, it's not a specific property pool, but it's just a general query, which I think perhaps you sort of can maybe clear up. I was just looking at one of the MA properties that comes up as MA, or a couple of them actually in Sevenoaks, where I live. Really, just looking at it as a hypothetical, just to get to get a feel of things. And just one thing on there, you've got the rental at 26.50 a square foot, and 6% initial net yield. Well, now, if you divide the 26.5% by 26.5 by the 6%, that gives that comes to £441 a square foot to purchase. You're saying, in the little square box, it comes up with the MA opportunities. That that comes to 441, but you're giving it as 415. Is there any particular reason for that?
Yeah, so it's a net yield rather than a gross yield. So in essence, what that should be saying. So if I kind of just give an example, so we kind of can kind of understand what we're talking about here. So so the question Ian's raising is, he's looking at the Class MA strategy number 9. What that shows you, when you click on a property, it shows you the GDV, conversion cost, and then the purchase price. And on the particular site that Ian's talking about, there's £25 a foot. Ian, I think you said, was it that sort of number?
Yeah, it was 26.50.
Yeah. So the question that Ian's asking is, well, actually, if you take the 26 quid, so this one's saying 16, so it'll work the same way on this. So let me kind of just explain this. So if I take 16 divided by 0.06, which is in effect the question that Ian's asking, my number says 266 per square foot. So the big question is, well, why is the system showing me 255 per square foot? Well, the reason for that is that it's a net initial yield. So we divide by 1.0575, and that then should give me, well, I've got 252 in effect for my calculation there. So in essence, it's the difference between the gross yield and the net yield in effect. So
I see.
The 6% net is saying that to get 6% net, I'm going to pay 255 as the purchase price.
Right.
I'm going to pay some stamp duty. Then I'm going to pay probably an agent as part of that. I suspect that's why I've got 252 rather than 255, is that I suspect the system is not expecting to pay an agent's fee when you found the site off market yourself, in effect. So I suspect it's taking 4.75% off.
Right.
So in effect, I'm paying 255. Then I'm paying probably 4% stamp duty, something like that. Then I'm paying a bunch of lawyers and this sort of stuff to do some.
I've got you. Yeah, I see. Yeah, I see. So it's a sort of Yeah. So the way you're working, it's on a gross percentage rather than just the net. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so it's so the purchase price that you would pay is 255,
Yeah.
but overall you'd be paying 265. So the number that you've got, or the number I've kind of got on there,
Yeah.
so the net yield in effect is you pay less because you've got to pay your fees on top, still get your 6% return, all
Right.
the money paid out in effect. So it's a 6%
Right.
net rather than 6% gross yield.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, did you mention a rate you apply on that 6% pooled or on the NY to bring it up to the gross 1 point something? Did you say or?
Yeah, so I believe, I must confess, I don't know the exact number.
No, okay.
We can work it out. Actually, give me 2 seconds. So divided by 0.06 is 266. And if I divide that by 255, it's 4.5% in effect, or 4 point. So in effect, it's, I think, so in old money, sort of before stamp duty changed,
Yeah.
we would always divide by 1.0575. In
Yeah.
effect, 5.75% costs to buy a site. So it's 4% stamp duty.
Right.
Over whatever the amount was back then,
Right.
and then you have your agent fee of 1% to buy the site, and then you have your 3/4 1% for the other fees like your lawyers' fees and this sort of stuff.
Right.
So I think what they've done here is they've not put 1% in for your finder's fee, because obviously there's no point paying an agent to go and find your stuff when you found it yourself and you're direct vendor, and you've got to pay that fee in effect. So that 1% isn't in, which is why I think they've allowed 4.75%, whatever it is, for that in effect.
Right.
That makes sense. How are you finding the Class MA opportunity? Are you finding plenty on? There seems to be quite a lot in Sevenoaks.
Yeah, there are quite a lot of opportunities here. I think whether or not they would, in practice, actually, translate to viable schemes. I don't really know, because I mean, obviously a lot of them are occupied and so on, and you would have to battle the council with parking and all that type of stuff. So I mean, it's all good stuff, but I really want to build up a sort of fund of opportunities and then sort of zoom in on potential ones. But that's hopefully something I'll do in the future. I'll look at other towns as well in my area, but obviously, hopefully, I'll have a few, because you have these deal clinics every Wednesday. Is that correct? You have it every Wednesday. So hopefully, I'll have something more sort of concrete, pardon the pun, to sort of show you, and look at hypotheticals and so on.
Absolutely. Well, the magic number is 100 letters is the magic number. So
is it? Yeah.
Yeah, if you send 100. So I suppose the kind of my feedback on that sort of comment. Sorry, I don't mean it kind of an aggressive way. So my feedback would be, I wouldn't spend vast amounts of time at this point working out whether schemes stack up and whether I'm parking in and this kind of stuff. What I would do next is I'd find out if I had a willing seller or not. So I'd be saving lots of these properties. I'd give it a kind of a quick cursory look, but in essence, what I'm saving off the back of the work that I'm doing now, if I go and start clicking around through all of these properties and say, well, actually, they work, they not work, then what I'm saving is the cost of writing the letter to the owner to say, do they want to sell it or not?
Right.
So in effect, I'm probably saving 50p or £1 each time I go through and review one of these sites.
Right.
So if they're broadly speaking on profile, then you know that in planning terms, the majority of the headlines have been ticked off.
Yeah.
Which means then if I've got a willing seller that's prepared to talk to me about selling it, then there's quite a lot I can do with the building to make it work. I could perhaps put some undercroft parking in. Those who want to be expensive, but in the right scheme, I might well do that, because, so for example, over here, you've got 73% return on cost.
Yeah.
I've got plenty of money in that. I've got 1.4 million quid worth of profit in it, which means that if I've got to pay a bit more on the conversion or put some undercroft, get my Class MA PD rights put in place, and then go forward and have a revised scheme off the back of I've already got the change of use now secured because of Class MA.
Sure.
Then I have to do with that kind of principle established, then go back in for a full application for something more comprehensive. And equally, I've got quite a lot in the overage, if you like, that I could perhaps share with the owner. I can, pay a bit more build cost and that kind of stuff to unlock it. Also, because there's some really quite viable stuff, certainly around here, obviously, kind of the colour of the title as it's kind of plotted, the more viable it is, obviously.
Yeah.
Sort of the more I've
But
got.
you see, yeah, but I mean, there's a couple of questions for writing for that. I mean, firstly, I mean, for that one you zoomed in on, I mean, I think that's probably the Sevenoaks District Council offices. So, I mean, they probably wouldn't be interested in selling, I wouldn't think, because, I mean, you never know, I suppose. I mean, it might be worth a try, but I think you've got also. I think another one you had was like a driving test centre where I took my driving test on sometime about the last ice age.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're looking at it now.
That's your vets. Yeah, I'm looking at there.
So I mean, that might not be that might not be desperately practical, and there's no harm in trying.
Sure.
But I mean, but I mean, another point is that, okay, I mean, say, because I'm a relatively newbie at this, if I contact the owners and they say, well, it would be interesting, but we might be interested, but well, who are you, and what exactly have you got in mind? Well, I mean, that's rather difficult question to answer, isn't it? At this
is it
early stage?
So perhaps I'll say two questions. So one of the questions you said was, I was picking up the district council office. Actually, those kind of ownerships that can be difficult to unlock are actually removed from the strategy. Actually, so
are they? Okay.
The actual district council offices isn't being brought back because we have a district council. It's going to be I think that's get best value.
Yeah.
So it's kind of being removed for you. So it's doing quite a lot of the hard work behind the scenes for you to mean that it's kind of reasonably viable, hopefully.
Sure.
So the question then about credibility. I mean, I suppose what kind of boils back. So I'll tell you a story I haven't shared with anybody before, actually, which is so when I was 26, we were building out a scheme in Birmingham, sort of through the family portfolio, in effect, and we needed a grant to go. It was a sort of a long, painful process, and in essence, at 26, I ended up going into one of the sort of the regional development funds, in effect, so kind of the grant people, in effect.
Sure.
Never built anything for my life, trying to secure a £1.5 million grant off them. And so the question was, well, who are you, and how do I know you can build this, and how do I know you're going to spend this £1.5 million carefully, because it's a lot of money. And
sure.
And so the way that I got around that was that I relied on a professional team. So I had a very good QS that I took along to the meeting with me, who had plenty of grey hair like I've now got but didn't have back then. Had a very good architect. The very good architect then brought in a very good QS. So the three of us went together, and any of those kind of technical questions they asked, those people were able to kind of push that back, in effect. And so that's kind of one of the tricks that you can use with this is that kind of planning export, in effect. So if we do Sevenoaks, if I could spell it, would helpful, wouldn't it?
District,
residential opportunities, something like that.
Yeah.
So what that will give you is a list of all the residential planning applications across Sevenoaks, of course.
Yeah.
From that, what I can then do is I can filter that for the properties that have sold in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
That will give me a list of locally active developers that are buying sites in the last 3 years and then submitting planning applications on them for residential use after that.
Right.
And then what I can then do is see, well, who are they using?
Yes.
Because then I'm going to have residential architects and planners that are active in that local area, that know the local council, who I could then take along with me to that meeting.
Yes.
And then when they say, well, have I got any confidence you can get this planning consent? You sit and look at your architects and go, one for you.
Yes. Yes.
They can answer that as part of the
that
question for you.
Yeah. No, that is, I hadn't really, because obviously in your other webinars and so on, you said, go to planning export, and still there, you've just done it, and look up, the things that have been done on or prior approval and so And so you can, get in contact with the agents and the architects and so on. So I mean that is obviously a way of building a certain amount of credibility.
Absolutely. I think.
I mean, I could also bring on board my friend, so we're doing this together, but he's a hands-on surveyor, Tom, APC surveyor, so he's a fairly knowledgeable chap anyway. But I think, you want, I think you've really answered the question, or gives me a route to go down is, approach people who've done similar schemes and say, well, as you say, would you come along for a meeting with me? And it gives me something more concrete to say to the owners and so on, doesn't it? And it gives a more professional approach indeed. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, with a list of those people, then I suppose what you kind of want to do is you want to find somebody that's submitted a similar kind of size schemes. I don't know what kind of schemes you're looking to do, but if you can find one here that is the right kind of size, whether it's conversion of a hall into 2 dwellings or whatever it is, depending on how many units you're planning to do, construction of two bedroom semi-detached houses in effect, maybe that's the kind of thing, I don't know. But then of course over here what you've then got, so this Gordon Samuel Developments, whoever they are, I don't know who they are, but in effect, they're saying that they pay $370 for that piece of land. They use Idea Plan as their architect. And you can kind of go through and people like Pegasus, I would think, are probably a bit big. I could be wrong. So you sort
I
of
think
see
the name rings a bell. So I know a few property developers in Sevenoaks anyway, so I might come across them in the. Well, I just happened to see Robinson Escort. I mean, when I was doing some residential property development, I came across them, and also Kentmere Homes. I know them as well. So
So
might come, and of course you've got their agent and the agent, which is often the architect, isn't it? So
absolutely.
big question of, because you don't give the architect's address, do you? But or the agent's address, but you can easily Google that, obviously.
Yeah, sure. It's purely pop it into there, and you'll very quickly get you very quickly find them. So there you go.
Yeah, Robinson Escort.
So it's kind of it's a very quick way to sort of do that, and I suppose that's kind of part of the beauty of it, is understanding who are those local developers trusting their sites with to go and get their planning consents, and that's kind of where that can help you. And I guess the other thing that's kind of useful, so kind of when you're off market, sort of truly off market, which is what that strategy will help you find. And of course the next bit then is around, these guys down here you probably don't need to worry about, because they're doing some quite big schemes, aren't they? 30 million quid, that's quite a big lump. So
it's quite a lot.
Yeah, that's quite a big old scheme that. In fact, it's up to 13 and a half as well. So there's kind of some pretty big chunky stuff going on. But in essence, the thing you're going to have to do then as part of that is you have to prove to the owner that you're paying the right kind of price for them. So you're paying the right kind of price for that office building that you want to go and buy off them, or whatever it is that kind of comes back off this off the overlay in effect. And so the kind of 2 tricks around that then are, firstly, using the commercial comparables. So which are the commercial buildings in this area that have sold?
Yes.
So I can sort of click apply, a quick search here, and that will then plot those on the map for me, hopefully, if we've got any. There are many kicking around, aren't there?
There are a few,
Look, let me put these back on again now, because we kind of do want these. So sort of the odd sort of property and stuff that's sold here and there. So that will kind of give you an understanding of what they paid there. And then the other thing that kind of can be useful for that is then looking at the marketplace as well. So for example, there's something there that's to let, I don't know what it is, a small 350 square feet or 400 square foot, whatever that is. It's perhaps a bit small for what we're talking about today, I don't know. So we're in the market there with sort of through the government. There's an office there to let with Michael Rogers, 800 square feet. So that kind of might be more interesting, and we can go off and have a look at the details of that. That's then going to start.
That was to let though, wasn't it? And it's not to buy, is it? So that.
Yeah, totally. But of course, if you can get the handle on exactly what the rental levels are, and you can prove that by saying, well, this is something that's very comparable to that, and then you can apply a yield to say, well, this is what I think the right price for that is, and then we can perhaps share an overage over and above that. Or indeed, you can ring, one of the contacts off this when I download the brochure. Who's the person that's letting that building? Well, they're probably going to know what So Mike Lewis,
Yes.
Michael Rogers is going to know what that marketplace looks like and what the kind of sensible yields are, what the sensible price per square foot might look like for the building you're looking at anyway. So you sort of get that sort of off on the ground kind of knowledge of that. You can look at what stuff's sold, and you can then look at what the quoting prices are around the area, and sort of across all of those things, you're going to come back to a sensible ballpark for the building you're looking at.
Yes.
I suppose one of the tricks to that as well is just remembering that I suppose not all commercial buildings are born equal.
No.
And kind of one of the nice tricks around that is, of course, they give you a rate per square foot of rough estimate of rental levels off the back of that. So if your building is £9 a foot, and this one's 18, and that one's being quoted at 20 quid a foot or something, you're probably half that, which means you're at 10, and then so you can kind of use that to just kind of pro rata the amounts that you see, if that makes sense.
Yes, I'm a bit confused on that.
So what I was going to say is if you've found you found a property on your on your strategy, so we've gone down this and we found, I don't know, what this is over here. So there's a Class E office. Now the one we were looking at over here had a rate assessment of £18.
Yes.
And actually this one here has a rate assessment of £17.44.
So
they're broadly the same. If on the other hand I found, so it's probably a bit lower, isn't it? So there's an office building there, again that's £17 actually, so it's kind of broadly similar. Let's see if I can find one that's a different price. That's probably so there's one there, again £17.50. It's kind of helpful, actually makes the comments quite easy because also
it does. It's the same, isn't it? Because and that's another thing I sort of discovered, because originally, because I mean the way you're doing it now is taking the yield on the amount per square foot to find the value, but previously you were doing it on 15 times the rateable value, weren't you? That's how you used to do it. But that comes to a very different figure, because I mean the one I quoted, which you cleared up because you were talking about sort of gross yield as opposed to net yield. But the one because I mean the difference between that was 441, not 415. But doing it 15 times the rates of 18, it brings it in at 274. So that miles below. So I mean, you think doing it on the rental is better than doing it on the rates, do you, as evaluation?
Yeah, so this is the reason that the Class MA strategy does that is that that 15 times multiplier was kind of a sort of a simple way of analysing commercial buildings and sort of saying, roughly speaking, what they're kind of worth. But of course, rents have moved at different rates across the country. And yields that you'd pay in London are much tighter than they are in the northwest, northeast, into Wales, places like you have higher yields in those areas. Capital values are lower in those areas compared with London. Same southeast is typically higher than those areas too, but it's to be lower than, typically not as keen a yield as you have in London in effect. So of course that 15 times multiplier is just a rough estimate to say what kind of ballpark is this in. It's not then looking at in London the yields are going to be tighter and rents probably grown more as well, in which case, so that's where this is a bit cuter in terms of getting it sort of more accurate for the existing use values in effect. So the 15 times multiplier is very useful, and so the reason why I think that's useful and kind of why I say that is that if you look at something like Class G Shops and Uppers, something like that, then there's kind of always this question in your mind around whether it's just shops and uppers that you're converting the upper parts, or are you doing bits of the ground floor under the old Class M or perhaps a new Class MA kind of thing, which is sort of kind of interesting when you start to get buildings perhaps like this with the return frontage in effect. So where I can get into the back of, say, this building or indeed this building around the side, is it better that this space at the back is in retail use, or is it better it's in residential use? Question mark. Well, the way that you can very easily find that out is that when you look at the rate assessment for it, obviously you get given a Zone A rent. So we know that the Zone A rent at the front is 50 quid,
Yeah.
which means that kind of what's that as a capital value? Well, if we multiply it by 15, it gives us something sensible, and it's kind of an easy number to multiply by.
Right.
Where we are here, probably 20 is probably better because it's Sevenoaks
Yes.
rather than, you know,
Yeah. I see.
Coventry or something like that.
Yeah.
And so what's
Right.
kind of useful for that is that then that remaining zone C, or kind of this is actually kind of zone D actually, is at £6 a foot.
Yeah.
So 6 times 15 means I'm probably buying at 100 quid a foot.
Yeah.
6 times 15 or £90 a foot kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if it was 20 times multiplier, it would be 120 quid a foot. So I'm in 100, 120 kind of ballpark. I convert for 100, I'm in at 220.
Right.
And then sales values are kind of up at 600 quid.
Right.
So I know that I've got plenty of margin in that.
Yeah.
So it sort of gives me a feel for, well, is zone C the space that I can convert? Well, maybe actually 12 quid a foot times 20, 250, 100 quid to convert it, 350. But I'm selling it for over 500.
Yeah.
It's got margin in that too. So I can really look at anything from zone C backwards
Right.
and make that convert.
Yeah.
But at 25 quid a foot,
Yeah.
I probably can't.
No.
So really, it sort of starts to set my scheme out for me to say that front 40 feet is probably retail.
Sure.
Probably something like that. So what's that? 15 meters ago, not bad. So that bit is clearly staying as retail.
Yes.
This lot probably would convert into residential.
Yeah. Sure.
And then of course the upper parts is calculated for me anyway. So I sort of then have this kind of understanding of what I might want to do. So if as we kind of talk about the current marketplace and the kind of stuff that CACI was saying to us with retailers and what their kind of how their worlds have changed, obviously through lockdown and the migration onto online, because obviously all our shops been closed for these big chunks of time, and how they're sort of managing these multi-channel sales strategies in effect, then that space that perhaps they once wanted at the back with this kind of big lump of a building and this sort of stuff, perhaps they don't need now, because actually the online retailing is so much more of a thing. They've gone and got themselves a distribution warehouse somewhere, and they're sort of pumping the sales out through that. And actually the old school way of filling the shop full of stuff and trying to sell it is something they've moved on from in effect. So that's where that sort of 15 times multiplier used to come in. Sevenoaks perhaps 20 times rather than 15 times, but it's just that sort of quick sort of understanding of which bits of this is broadly going to work, and have to go and do the detailed appraisal afterwards and sort of design it well up and make sure it all kind of stacks. But it's that sort of early, what am I kind of dealing with here?
Yeah, I mean, one question I was going to ask you, Paul, is going back to what we were saying on NA, and I suppose it applied to shop and uppers as well, anything really, because would you advise, I mean, approaching the owners first, or approaching sort of architects and so on, because the question that you answer to a certain extent is you're going, if you go and see the owner, they're going to who are you, and what exactly are you proposing? If you've got some people behind you already, and obviously local people are going to give you on the phone, just architects and agents and so on, they're going to give you a bit of a sort of indication anyway of whether they think it's viable. So I suppose it would be better to sort of get your team in place before approaching the owners, wouldn't it?
Well,
or not.
I think you've got choices. So I think with something like this, if you've got the Class MA strategy, then the world is very different, I think, for you compared with what it was before.
Right.
What I mean by that is that the sort of balance of power skews, right? So you send your 100 letters out, and you're going to have 4 of these conversations that are going to come forward. So if one of those people is particularly hard and particularly aggressive with you, then you can put them to one side, and deal with the other 3.
Right.
And if 2 of those then also annoying, well, go back on Nimbus for another hour, send another 100 letters out, and then you've got another 4 coming in through the front door at the same time.
Right.
So what you're looking for, so when you get that first call, that first conversation, go and meet them, go and have a chat, go and see what their motivations are. You can be explaining to them the process that needs to happen next. We need to get some schemes drawn up. I've done some research. I think I can do what I want to go and do with it, which is going to be some sort of residential conversion. Don't know about density yet, not sure about prices, but pretty confident I should be able to get to those. My early numbers make me maybe comfortable I can get to a sensible number for an offer price and above that. Now, how would you feel about some sort of split of the proceeds? If I pay for the planning costs and I take that off and then we split the proceeds in between, how would you feel about that? Or, and start talking about those sorts of things and start talking about what their motivations are.
Right.
Why did you reply to my letter? What was it that made my letter interesting for you? Why did you want to speak to me?
Yeah.
So that you can flip that meeting on its head and get them and use that as a pre-qualification meeting to understand what are the motivations behind for that owner, and therefore where do you got to kind of get to with it in effect? What's that proposal you're going to put forward to them? That because it's going to take some work. So you kind of want them to make sure you kind of want to know that they're real, they're comfortable, they're kind of happy to do a deal with you, and that they've kind of got that mindset of being prepared to engage in effect. And if they're not, and they're sort of playing hardball with you, then actually, there's plenty more opportunity out there. I'll go and chase that. And it's quite a powerful message to give them as well. Is the fact that and I'm not sort of desperate for your site. I've got a whole lot of other sites. And if you're going to be difficult with me, you're not going to kind of play the game, then I'll just go and look at that other stuff over there. And that's absolutely fine. That's their choice. But I'll go and do this over here.
Yeah. I mean, it just might, say you get somebody who's interested, and I sort of give them my mobile number or whatever, and they phone me.
Sure.
I would have thought, one of the questions they would say, well, what previous experience have you got? And I said, well, I can say, well, my partner, Tom is he's a surveyor, and I've got some property development experience. But I think they're going to, they're going to say, well, I think I prefer to deal with somebody rather more experienced than you appear to be. That's the only.
Well, so I think there are tricks to that.
Well, you've done it, so you know what you're talking about, don't you? So
yeah. I think you can. I think you can rely on the quality of your design team. Yeah. So you can be open and clear about this. Is that we've got plenty of property experience. My partner's a surveyor. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
We've got a great design team on these sites. They cost us a lot of money to go and deploy them out on these sites, and so I want to make sure before I start spending that money and start investing in your site,
right,
that you're really and let's make it about them, not about you. You just need to be confident and comfortable that I've got a great team behind me. I've done a load of research on your property. You can quote to them the stuff that you have checked. So you've looked at sales values because Nimbus has done it for you. You've checked that the planning policy works because Nimbus has done it for you. You can be quoting the stuff that Nimbus is telling you to them. Roughly speaking, what those values are of the existing building. You've got a bunch of similar buildings you can take with you to that meeting. You can take some sales comparables with you. You can run a comps report out of Nimbus and take that with you. So all of that's just going to build confidence around, well, this isn't rocket science to go and develop a building out. You just got a bunch of professionals behind you and an appraiser you've got to go and hit. It's not rocket science, is it?
Well, no. How easy would it be to get? Once you maybe you've got the guys you've got the guy interested. You've got the you've got a team in place. How easy would it be then to get the funding for the purchase and the development?
Yeah, sure. So it depends whether you need bank debt or whether you need private finance. We need investment or not. Right. If you need investment and private finance, I think that's probably a bit more tricky on your sort of first deal, unless you kind of perhaps partner up with one of the training companies, perhaps helpful for that. If it's this sort of stuff, there's kind of a few names that sort of spring to mind. We might help you with that sort of stuff. That's if you need the private finance. Equally, if it's sort of early doors in this, and again, they can be quite useful. Sort of some of these mastermind sessions and stuff you can kind of go on, where they'll kind of help you and sort of answer some of those questions. You'll see a lot of them on webinars with us, kind of names that sort of spring to mind, like Ranjan Bhattacharya or Mark Stokes, Echo Academy, and people like that. Susie Carter, kind of a number of
Brickflow is another one that you deal with, isn't it?
Yeah, so Brickflow. So that's Ian Humphreys over at Brickflow. So they will do the sort of the finance for you. So they'll go out and find development finance and sort of see which ones are kind of suitable for you. And tell you kind of what those ballparks are in terms of the bank finance you can get and development finance,
Sure.
bridge, all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So you know, tap into them, by all means, they'll be kind of useful to understand all of that. So that's kind of how you're going to get the debt in place, and then obviously you've got the deposits to go and sort out, and whether that's your own money or whether that's investors' money.
Right.
You can go and find the investors through Nimbus, but then you might just want to think about how you get them comfortable with the track record of it all.
Yeah.
You can do that through having a decent design team.
Yeah.
And explain to them, well, I've got this design team this is my architect. The architect, obviously, then you can go and check through the planning export. So here's some schemes. In fact, Bristol got this. If I go, can I do paste into there now? I can. So if I do Robin Escott planning, an export, this is then going to show me the schemes that Robin Escott, whatever the names were, have done across the UK in effect. So are they doing similar schemes to the ones that I'm doing in the councils that I'm active in? And then you can sort of say, well, here's a bunch of schemes that an architect have done that are very similar. This is the rest of the design teams. You can speak to them about the stuff that they've done, who else they've worked with, who they've been impressed with, which QSs have they worked with, which employers agents they work with, they like, and this sort of stuff. And before you know it, you've got that sort of CV of the team that then you can bring forward, basically. So you can have those conversations early doors. Have those conversations now with the architects, kind of start to understand who they are and sort of go meet for a coffee or something.
Sure.
Talk about what you're up to. And then kind of at some point, you're going to ask them for a bit of free advice. And then from that, of course, you can take that advice with you to go and see the owners. What you can do is you can use, so on the information panel, there is a little button where you can go and buy a little policy report from Mass Reports.
Right.
And again, that can be quite useful for you as well, because what it will give you is it will give you a little overview of policies. You can take that with you to the meeting and say, well, look, I've checked the policy. I found you through Nimbus. Here's a report that I've got which sort of talk about chapter and verse the policy that applies to your property. Here's some residential sales comparables, sales prices of the property. Here's some stuff that's sold in terms of commercial buildings. And kind of before you know it, you've got quite a compelling case to say, well, your track record is kind of, oh gosh, looks like there. I don't know what's going on there. Your track record is kind of almost irrelevant, quite frankly, because you've got all this information that's supporting all of that.
Sure. Yeah. No,
Makes sense.
Yeah. No. It certainly does. It certainly does. I'm just just as one thing off the top of my head. I mean, obviously, perhaps one would build it out oneself with funding. I mean, it could possibly, if you have everything in place and get an option agreement, so it will be possible to flip it on to a developer, perhaps. I don't know. So,
yeah, sure. And that same sort of that same approach on the planning export actually is where you're going to find those people.
Yeah.
So again, this little search here is saying, this is the planning export I did at the start, which said what are the residential opportunities. So the residential planning application. So using that residential planning applications button off the exports, and then filtered that for the date it was last sold. So this then says, well, this has been sold in the last 3 years, a residential planning application in on it.
Yeah.
Which means I've got local developers. And of course, there's your list of people then that you can go and sell this thing to. Go and get your planning, sell it to a developer. Thanks very much. And the pitch to that, so I suppose what's kind of interesting is that, depending on the schemes you put forward, these people want some quite big schemes. So they're, some quite big lumpy stuff. So if you find the big stuff, then they could be kind of interesting. But if you're finding smaller stuff and that's stuff that's kind of working, then of course some of this stuff, then some of these people are then the ones you want to go and get in touch with.
Yes.
And of course that pitch to, Garland Homes, whoever they are, being paid £485,000 for a scheme over here. It's kind of, you ring them up and you say, we're interested to see you bought the property at Kingdom Hall, Cedar Terrace and Sevenoaks. Wondering how you're getting on. Looks like an interesting scheme. Just wondering if you're looking for anything similar, anything more, and may have some stuff that might be suitable. Would you like to have a cup of coffee and talk about what it is you're up to and what you're looking for, and off you go.
Sure.
So kind of really, kind of that's what's going to get you. So if you ring up Garland Homes and say, can I speak to somebody about Kingdom Hall at Cedar Terrace? I guarantee you'll get through the gatekeeper, through to the person that bought that site.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, what's happened? Has it burnt down? Is there is there a problem? So you'll definitely get through. And then it's just a question of, well, saw you bought this, saw you put this planning application in for whatever it is, conversion of a hall into 2 dwellings. How are you getting on? Just interested what your plans are with it. Interested to see that you bought it. Interesting project. Go and look at the planning application. You know, it's like see what they actually submitted, see what kind of all of that looks like.
Yeah.
Off the back of that, then you'll go and get some interesting discussions going on. In effect, I think they'll be quite impressed when you talk like that to them. Which then means that if you then want to go and sell them something, you kind of prove your credibility at the start.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean that's very interesting. So really, you'd sort of say get a pipeline, get a funnel of, send your letters out, get it, get the interest there from the potential vendors, and then sort of put your schemes in place for, after finding your comparables and contacting agents and so on.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's nothing stopping, if you're early in that journey and sort of a bit unsure about what the next steps are on this sort of stuff, then what you can do, of course, is you can go and speak to these people and say, well, actually, what I would like to do is I would like to do it on an agency basis to start with. So I want to charge a 2% fee or something like that for the purchase price. But I'm quite happy to leave that money in and perhaps put some more in as well and come in as a joint venture partner. I want to sit on your shoulder and watch you develop this thing out, see how you take it through. I want to sit in all your design team meetings. I want to sit in on the negotiations with the owner. I've got the opportunity here. Want your support? Are you okay with that? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say that's absolutely fine.
Yes. No, that's very helpful, Paul. Thank you very much indeed. And of course, I can always run ideas by you on the deals clinic as well too, can't I? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I seem to be hogging this. Is there anybody else on the
webinar? That's absolutely fine. Don't panic. Well, for the rest of the audience, if anyone else would like to ask a question, Ian and I will keep talking all afternoon otherwise, which is absolutely fine by me. And it sounds like it's fine by Ian as well. So I'll leave you thinking more questions in the background. If anybody else has got any questions, they would like to raise their hand as well. I'm going to just check the chat. I haven't been looking in the chat. The chat's clear actually, and the Q&A is clear as well. So if anybody else would like to ask a question, perhaps they could raise their hands now for me. Give me a chance to have a drink of water as well.
Yeah, I think I'll get a slurp as well.
Fabulous. Well, I haven't got any more questions in there. So, have you got any more questions, or are you kind of covered now?
Well, I think that because I think what I'll do now is we'll go back to the drawing board, start looking hard at some of those potentials, and maybe look at because you say so send out 100 letters, and so you would sort of advise looking for as many as that, which is, I mean, obviously I couldn't find 100 in Sevenoaks, but I can look at other towns in the southeast, of course. And then,
yeah, sure. So 100 is the magic number, because what you tend to find with 100 letters is you get a 10% response rate. So your letter wants to be nice and soft. It wants to just be, I've done some research on your property. I think it might be suitable for what I'm looking for. And if you've got any plans to dispose of all or part, then please let me know.
Sure.
Here's my number, here's my email address and my phone number, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then what that will mean is you'll get 10 responses. Half will say, I'm not interested.
Yes.
Which I would hear not no never, but no not yet. So kind of send the letter in 6 months' time and see if they're perhaps interested at that point. The ones that don't respond, you can send them another letter in a couple of weeks' time or three or 4 months' time, something like that, and just see if there's anything there.
Sure.
But there'll be 4 people then, 4 or 5 that then will come back and want to talk to you. And those then are the ones that you go through the process we just talked about in effect. So I would target 100 letters. If you get 100 letters out, you'll get some very interesting discussions going. And of course, then you can just try your pitch and you can just play around with that pitch. I wouldn't worry too much about doing more pre-qualification. The system's already done for you. I would just go and get the letters out and start having those conversations, get yourself comfortable with that. Because the next step is, well, if you've got a willing seller or not. And if you haven't got a willing seller, then you're spending time analysing somebody else's site that you may never get your hands on. So
yes, yes. No, I think that's, yes. I mean, obviously, I won't find 107 Oaks, but you know, I can look at other. I mean, sort of similar to, I mean, Bromley and Tunbridge Wells, and
absolutely.
which are similar towns and similar sort of residential yields and so on. Yeah, I think that's very interesting. There's just one I came across this morning. I'm not sure if it was next to one of yours, one of the MA ones, but anyway, I clicked quite a large one. Anyway, I clicked on because there's one facility, isn't it, where you can bring up the company's selling activity, and so on. And some it was based in the I think the Channel Islands, so it's obviously an offshore company.
Sure.
And I think they said they disposed of 6,000 properties or something this year. So they're obviously in selling.
Got a good chance of
selling mode. So it might be worth just approaching them.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I suppose one of the things, if you're sort of moving off patch, a lot of people do that. So a lot of people do move. Obviously, with commercial conversions, there's only so many in a particular town.
Of course.
Actually, moving sort of further afield is part of the trick. Actually, one of the things you can be doing as part of that, is using this sort of average sales price overlay in effect.
Right.
So, I suppose what I would be.
You've got quite a big area there, haven't you? So you can do that because I'm not too experienced with the system at the moment, because you're covering a huge area there, aren't you? So
sure. So what I was going to say was that so I might want to stay away from this place Ash or whatever that is, because what I can sort of see is the average sales price across this area are kind of 450, 550. So Seven Oaks is a pocket of strong values around that area, and actually where those numbers get suppressed, actually I'm probably not going to then put forward a nice swanky new flat scheme on a class MA conversion in those areas, particularly because it's going to be of limited attraction in many ways. So I've sort of tried to stay some of the better areas and sort of pick them out as a result of that in many ways. So the challenge I think you've got around there is obviously you've got lots of green belt sort of wrapping around a lot of this. So you've got to focus in on those sustainable locations in effect, but there is a fair chunk of that that's green belt, which means you probably
how did you? I mean, just physically, how do you get to cover such a large area like that? What do you have to put into the search thing for that?
So you just zoom out and pop the.
I see.
Yes, pop the market section on here. Zoom out of the system, and it will just kind of fill that for you with the latest strategies.
Yeah, I see. So and it's giving your a rate per square foot and also your MA profits as well. Yeah,
got them both on. Yeah.
So that's a very good way of doing it, because I remember on the example you did on the webinar a few days ago, I think you were in Hemel Hempstead, weren't you? But you said you would prefer that you were in Oxford or something, just about.
Yeah, sure. So same.
But you did find quite a juicy one in Hemel Hempstead, I remember.
Yeah. So this was it here, wasn't it? I think so. So you can sort of see Albans and the sort of £600 a foot, and Rickman's is that Berkhamsted, isn't it, over there? And of course, Hemel Hempstead is that sort of pocket of deprived value rather than affluence.
Because going out here, you've got 500. You've got quite a few pockets of 500, haven't you?
Absolutely, yeah. And of course,
it's really worthwhile doing.
Yeah. So that is kind of, there's a few sort of things that means, I suppose, with the higher sales prices, you can afford to buy more you can afford more for the residual value calculation for the buildings. So you can afford to buy better buildings in effect and convert them.
Sure.
I think the flip side of that is it becomes more competitive. Yeah. So actually, for me, I'm kind of a big fan of this Middle England band, actually, which is where you have it's less competitive. because actually a lot of developers go, well, higher numbers, let's go focus there. Bigger residential values means more land value, which means that kind of got easier things to unlock in effect.
Sure.
But actually in Middle England, you still get some strong values that are strong enough to drive a sensible land value, which then means you can do sensible deals. But ideally, you want to do that in the better parts of town rather than the weaker parts of the area in effect. Otherwise, you're sort of less confident of that exit at the end of the day.
Yeah, because you've got some pretty strong values there, haven't you? You've got 500. You got even one here that's 600 pounds a square foot.
Yeah, sort of around.
I mean, it's not, because you tend to it's not maybe you tend to think of London and the southeast as where you get the higher values, but not totally that.
Yeah, sure. And there's very much a north-south divide, isn't there? I mean, there's kind of you can't quite see it on this map. You can sort of see a pocket of value here, and then it sort of radiates out in sort of circles. Yeah. But actually, kind of the key thing for me is that actually all of this band all around here still has plenty of value. It's still plenty strong enough to drive a land value that gets you a 100 grand, 130 grand worth of land value for a 3-bed semi. So you go and find a plot for 4 semis, you've got £500,000 worth of land value in it, and it stacks up every day long, all day long, to give the owner £250,000, spend 20 grand yourself, make £250,000 out of that and sell it, or go and build it out and make the profit out of the back of it. So it all kind of stacks up even in that band. Yeah. But of course, most people want to go and target this patch all down here because the values are higher. Yeah. So you get more in the land value, but of course it's way more competitive in effect. So
yes, yeah. Obviously it's sort of easier to start from one's home turf, but in a way, because obviously you know the areas. But is it likely to be too competitive in sort of the Sevenoaks area, or not necessarily?
You'll find out. I would just go and it's kind of one of the great things about this is that you can prove it. So I can give you my opinion, but actually you can go and prove that. We did really piece of work for a guy that we really like, actually, a guy called Shaq Baker that people probably know. In essence, what we did for him was, in a sort of bespoke service, is kind of map a chunk of the country and look at opportunities through the bespoke site finding service, then send them out. So he got a particular route he was traveling from where he lived to where he invested. And the question is, well, do I go and search where I live, or do I go and search where I'm investing? Or do I search somewhere in between? Yeah. So we did a sort of a carve of the country, so we load letters out, and then you go and check, well, where do I get the best response, and where do those things stack up best, and off you go, basically. So it was kind of a really neat way of doing it. You just go and, rather than sort of relying on, oh, I think this is the case. In the modern world, you can prove these things. You can prove it through the way that people respond with enough volume sent out. You can then understand, well, where do I get those interaction rates? Where are those interaction rates the best? And how does my letter perform? A letter is just a piece of marketing. It's just the same as sticking an advert out on Facebook or LinkedIn, or sticking an advert on the back of a bus and letting it drive around town. It's the same thing, isn't it? Yeah, sure. And all you're doing is tracking response rates with it. But I think in the properties we don't kind of understand that. We don't understand that it's this many letters comes out, this many inquiries come back in again. So we're very used to the fact that every building's different and every site's different with different constraints and this kind of stuff. But actually, all you're doing is just testing, say, is this attractive or not? Is it people going to come back to me or not? Yeah,
I mean, just one question on marketing letter, effectively, send a letter out. And I think I did get a copy of your sort of letter perspective, which is just very short. I mean, presumably it's not an idea at this very early stage, not to sort of quote any figures, just to say your property could be of interest to me, is it? And if you're in, from a development point of view, if you're interested, please contact me. Presumably that's all one should say at the early stage. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't start sort of saying, well, I'll give you £1 million for it or something.
Well, it's kind of interesting, actually. So we did a piece of work for a client where we were looking at automatic valuation models, in effect. So how do we know what a site's worth? So we can then put a number in a letter to go and send that to the owner of the site.
Right.
It was very interesting because I'm a bit of a nerd, so you can imagine kind of us trying to work out how do I get this as accurate as we can, and getting the teams to kind of code all this stuff in and trying to get this thing as accurate as possible. And And the client wasn't bothered actually, because he said, well, actually, if you send a letter out and you put a number in it, then you get two responses. One is, gosh, that's a lot of money. That's very interesting. Or two is, that's not a lot. My site's worth way more than that. What are you talking about?
Yes.
You get the response regardless of which one you put in.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So they were quite comfortable with that. For me, I wouldn't bother actually. It was kind of, it was a sort of a very big campaign they were doing. I think for me, the first thing is, have you got any plans to dispose of all or part? And if so, let's have a conversation. And I think in many ways, your next step is going to be, because everyone's got kind of a number in their mind. And actually what you're trying to do is try and get that number out from them if you can, so you know where you're aiming at. Right. If you don't know where you're aiming at, you're going to spend a lot of time poring over the detail of the appraisal. And so you kind of want to pin them to some numbers and try and get them bought into that, or perhaps bought into the idea of, we get a valuation done and we have that as our base point, then we'll stick it on the market when we get our consent, and we'll get it valued 3 times, take the average, and then that'll kind of be the price that we kind of set, and that's what you'll get, that's what I'm going to get. And sort of, you should always kind of be able to agree on the back of a napkin almost, so sort of saying, well, this is what we're kind of thinking, are you okay with that? Then we document that and head to terms to give that to the lawyers to go and work with. So I think there's I certainly wouldn't put the effort in now to go and value, because you won't get it right. There's so much more you've got to do to go and work it out. I wouldn't bother. I would just let them come back, say that you'll pay in excess of market value for it, because you're going to agree a price for it. It's going to stack up to more than that, and then share some of that uplift. And off the back of that, then off you go. So
I think obviously that it would be for a later discussion with the owner, but I'm not sure whether it was you or Ranjan suggested that sometimes the owner might want to come on the journey with you, so to speak. So I mean, he can maybe own it whilst you do, which obviously de-risks it considerably, does it? And it gives him sort of skin in the game for him, doesn't it, as well?
Absolutely. So there was a same sort of thing actually was talked about yesterday by David Bailey on the webinar yesterday with him. And actually the thing that he didn't mention is that you can actually get the owner to leave the land in right until the very end. And you could, so in effect, that not only, so he was talking about leaving it, buying it subject to planning with the planning consent and paying more than it then. But of course, you could get them to roll that all the way through to the final sale. And they get paid out the sales of the first 3 flats or something. Which then means you're not putting anything down through that process. You're paying for the build cost, which gets paid for off the charging of the site. And of course, giving them a slice of that profit through the build phase as well, which they get paid out, kind of be after the banks. The bank get paid, then they get paid, then you get paid. Then you're putting very small amounts of money down through that process. They get a return, you get smaller returns, but of course your return on cost goes through the roof.
Absolutely. No, that's very interesting. So no, I think really, obviously I've got to have a discussion with Tom, but I think really, what I need to do is start, zooming in on ones that could be interested, get a few letters out, get a few responses, and then start taking them from there. And as I said, because we said before, you do these deals clinics every Wednesday, don't you? So I can always run them, run the odd one by you.
Absolutely. Brilliant.
And,
thank you, Ian.
Sorry to have hogged you for, but doesn't seem to have done anyone, and then nobody else
wants to speak to me. So I'm delighted you want to speak to me, and I'm delighted. I'm very touched.
No, that's been very helpful. Thank you very much. So whereabouts you based? Is it Leamington based or?
We're based in Warwick. Offices in Warwick. So we're based up there, very close to Warwick University. I don't know Warwick very well, but my my mum, who's long gone, but she was from Warwick actually originally. Very good, very good. Small world. Fabulous. Well, thank you, Ian. Good luck with the letter campaign. We'll look forward to hearing some positive results. 100 letters, that's the answer. 100 letters.
Okay. Thank you very much, Paul. Cheers.
Fabulous. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Right. So just quick reminder. So if anybody is interested in some further information on Nimbus, this is typically the process, the journey you'll go through with us. You start off with a 14-day free trial with us. You'll then typically do a one-to-one demonstration with our team, where they'll take you through how to find the right sites or assess them, depending on what you're looking for Nimbus to do, but typically to find and assess opportunities. Typically then you sign to Elite, and then if you want to, you can upgrade into the Elite Plus system. This is the system I've just been using with Ian just there. There are 3 new packages actually of in that Elite Plus system. This is a thing very much hot off the press, where what you now have is a package of opportunities for commercial conversions, for residential land and airspace, and indeed HMO developments. The commercial conversions package includes the strategy we've actually been using today in Sevenoaks, that Class MA strategy that we were looking at. Also includes the Class G strategy and indeed Class ZA and the low value commercial properties in residential areas. If you're looking for land and airspace, then we have residential development plots, we have low value commercial properties in residential areas, we have the Class ZA strategy. Again, this is the knocking down of commercial buildings and rebuilding them as flats with 2 stories on top of them. And we have the airspace opportunities of airspace above flats and airspace above houses under those Class A, AA, AB, AC, and AD PD rights, of course. And just finally, the HMO strategy. So HMOs can be quite interesting for those very high yields that you get off the back of HMOs. So we have a C3 to C4 and sui generis HMO strategy, which looks at where do you find a house with the right number of HMOs around it to allow you to first know there's a marketplace for it to go into, but equally to know there's not so many in that area that you can't then get your change of use to C4 or sui generis. And it also observes the Article 4 as well. So you know that even if it is Article 4, the particular building you're looking at has the right density of opportunities of properties around it to convert from one to the other. We have HMOs that with potential to extend. So what are those kind of low density HMOs? You can extend them and put more rooms into them. Of course, we have Class G, which you can back to back with Class L, which gives you commercial buildings or shops with upper parts that would then convert to residential and then move into HMO off the back of that with the Class L PD rights that follow that. And of course, low value commercial properties, which then you could convert into residential and HMO from there as well. So 3 different choices. Anybody's interested in those, there's some new sort of offer running at the moment, which runs until the 24th rather of September, so a week on Friday. Where the Elite package is, or the Elite system is £95 a month. The Elite Plus system with a single package, so a single one of those sort of overall strategies, if you like, is £195 a month, or you can have all 3 for £250 a month. Anyone would like to take advantage of that, there's a bit.ly link I can pop into the chat right now. Just give me 2 seconds while I do that for everybody. So it's https://bit.ly/nimbus call. Make sure I spelled that correctly for everybody. So there's a link there that hopefully should take you through to a website which looks like this, where you can book a call in with our team. The next one's at 4:15 this afternoon. Whole bunch tomorrow where you can get in and have a chat with them about getting yourself set up, taking your trial, taking your demo, and getting yourself having a go with the system. Hopefully all that's been useful. The final thing from me is firstly, thank you to you all for watching. Thank you to Ian for his time today to spend that time talking to me. I found it very interesting. Hopefully you have too. I've been Paul Davis. We've been Nimbus Maps. We look forward to seeing you again soon. All the best. Bye for now.